The palace gates are closing. The reputation is, well, it's in tatters. And the royal exile that the world knows as Fergie is staring directly into a financial abyss.
Yeah.
For decades, Sarah Ferguson has walked this impossible tightrope, hasn't she? Balancing her complicated ties to the monarchy with the ruthless demands of a commercial career.
And all while battling what you can only describe as a legendary debt problem.
A chronic one.
Yeah.
But that tightrope, it feels like it just snapped.
It absolutely did. We are watching a crisis unfold in real time, and it's all been triggered by the dramatic resurfacing of these leaked emails tying her directly back to the convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein.
And we should be clear, these aren't just like old stories being rehashed.
No, not at all. These are new revelations. This is private correspondence that was sent just weeks after she publicly swore him off forever.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into this extraordinary situation. Our mission here is to really analyze this high-stakes make-or-break moment she's facing. It's driven by these explosive leaks, her spectacular history of financial disaster, and this tremendous pressure that's pushing her toward a potentially devastating six-figure tell-all interview.
We're going to pull apart the recent reports, look at the royal establishment's swift, very calculated moves to formally cut her loose, and analyze her reported precarious mental state.
And crucially, we need to explore why the palace is truly terrified of what she might say now. Now that she's, structurally and financially completely unconstrained by the monarchy.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So the foundational problem here, it's all in the timeline. The level of contradiction it reveals is just staggering. You have to go back to 2011.
Right, when the first scandal broke.
Exactly. When Sarah Ferguson publicly admitted she'd accepted £15,000 from Epstein, she said it was a loan to settle a secretary's debt.
And she knew how bad that looked, so she went into this complete PR overdrive. She gave this really key public interview in March 2011 where she was just utterly emphatic. She called it a gigantic error of judgment, vowed to repay it, said she abhorred sexual abuse, and then she declared she would have nothing ever to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. That was the public line. That was the damage control.
And this is where the new correspondence just blows that whole narrative apart, because just 1 month later, in April 2011, she reportedly sends an email to Epstein.
An email that contained this almost unbelievable level of warmth and loyalty.
Yes, especially given he was a convicted sex offender and there was this huge public outcry. It's just bizarre.
That's the email where she calls him a steadfast, generous, and supreme friend.
Supreme friend.
To go from publicly condemning the connection to privately calling him a supreme friend in less than 30 days, I mean, that's a credibility failure of the highest order.
It is. And what's more, in that same email, she didn't just thank him. She humbly apologized for linking him to sexual abuse in her public statement. The difference between her public stance and her private actions, it creates this massive, maybe insurmountable trust gap.
But, okay, to be fair, we have to look at the crucial nuance here. The defense that her team immediately rushed out, because at first that email just looked like pure, groveling for money.
Exactly. Her spokesperson gave a very specific legal explanation. They said she was advised to send that deeply apologetic email by her lawyers.
Why?
Because Epstein, they claim, had threatened to sue her for defamation, for publicly associating him with sexual abuse.
I find that defense, it's fascinating, but it also feels profoundly flimsy, doesn't it? If she was truly terrified of this expensive lawsuit from Epstein, which she obviously couldn't afford, wouldn't the priority be to just pay back the £15,000?
Neutralize his leverage?
Yes, instead of sending a groveling email that could, and now has been, used against her.
It does raise a really important question about her priorities at the time. It suggests the immediate legal threat was seen as more terrifying than the long-term reputational risk of this email ever coming out.
So it frames the apology not as, personal loyalty, but as a quick, cheap legal move.
A transaction, just to ward off a cost she couldn't possibly bear.
Well, regardless of the reason, the fallout has been immediate and severe.
Yeah.
Her entire commercial life depends on her being associated with, wholesome causes, children's books, wellness.
Right.
The appearance of loyalty, no matter how legally motivated, just proved instantly toxic.
And the lust of institutions that cut ties is so striking because of what they do. They all deemed her patronage inappropriate. We're talking about the Teenage Cancer Trust, where she'd been for 35 years.
Oh.
Julia's House, a children's hospice. The Natasha Allergy Research Foundation. These are the absolute pillars of her public brand, and they just collapsed overnight.
It just goes to show you, for a commercially active former royal, reputation isn't just important, it is the currency. And speaking of currency, this is where the sheer desperation comes into sharp focus. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because this whole crisis is fueled by a decades-long pattern of financial ruin.
Oh, her financial history is the stuff of legend. I mean, she has openly said she's terrible with money. She's faced down bankruptcy multiple times.
There was that lifestyle company in the U.S., Hartmore.
Hartmore LLC, yeah. It collapsed in 2009 with debts approaching, what, £650,000? She just cannot manage wealth.
And the stories about her spending habits?
Yeah.
I mean, they paint a picture of someone just completely divorced from fiscal reality. This isn't just typical rich person spending. It borders on the absurd.
The anecdotes are staggering. Reportedly paying £65,000 for a personal trainer she used twice.
Twice?
Running up a £51,000 bill at Selfridge's.
At one store.
One store. And thousands in excess baggage fees because she travels with this ridiculous number of suitcases. It just shows a systemic inability to control spending.
You know, it's funny, those pressures were sort of masked for a while because she was actually very successful at building that commercial brand.
She was.
She had that lucrative 11-year deal with Weight Watchers, Avon, Wedgwood China. She's written dozens of books, produced a major film, The Young Victoria. For a while, she really was the self-made former royal.
But these Epstein leaks just completely undercut that whole idea of her being self-reliant. It wasn't just the £15,000. The more damaging allegation came from an email, reportedly from Epstein himself, claiming he'd been financially assisting her for 15 years.
15 years.
Which suggests a long-term pattern of dependence, not just a one-off mistake.
And if you look at the specific amounts she was allegedly asking for, it makes the crisis so much deeper. Another reported exchange shows Fergie actively asking for a much larger sum, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000.
For what?
To help me through the small bills that are pushing me over.
Wow. A request for up to $100,000 just to clear small bills, that shifts the whole narrative, doesn't it?
Completely.
It moves her from being this, hapless victim of circumstance to someone actively seeking major financial help from a highly compromised source over a long period of time.
So this overwhelming financial need is what brings us to right now. She's facing this severe brand toxicity, this chronic lack of money, and now American broadcasters have reportedly tabled significant six-figure bids for a tell-all interview. This isn't just an opportunity anymore. This is a lifeline.
It's the absolute critical juncture for her entire commercial future. Her team sees this interview as the last, best chance to salvage her reputation and protect what's left. And we're talking about that extraordinary 22-book deal she signed.
A 22-book deal. That represents millions in potential future earnings. If her brand is permanently toxic, that deal collapses, and her only major source of long-term income just vanishes.
And the toxicity is already hitting. Reports are saying her latest children's book was actually withdrawn from sale just days before it was supposed to be published, all because of this scandal. She really has no choice but to take this massive gamble.
And on top of all that, her financial desperation is being made so much worse by the royal family itself. King Charles has apparently been accelerating the process of, formally severing the York family's connections to the palace.
Right. The era of that together but separate household at Royal Lodge is definitely over. After Prince Andrew was stripped of his titles, Fergie also officially stopped using the courtesy title Duchess of York. She took it off her social media last year.
It's a physical and a titular separation.
But the most consequential move, by far, was the king forcing Andrew to surrender the lease on Royal Lodge, that 30-room mansion where Fergie had lived with him for decades, even after their divorce.
And Andrew has a fallback right, a property on the Sandringham estate. But for Sarah Ferguson?
For her, the consequence is stark. She has been told to find her own place to live. She is, effectively, without the royal safety net she's relied on for her entire adult life.
And given her net worth is reportedly quite low, and a large property in that area costs a fortune, this is just massive personal instability piles on top of profound financial instability.
And reports suggest this whole eviction process has plunged her into a really precarious mental state. She's reportedly at a low ebb, very paranoid, believing she'll be targeted by dark forces.
That sounds unsettlingly familiar.
That kind of heightened security anxiety, coupled with her new exposed status, it evokes some really unsettling echoes of the pressures Princess Diana faced when she was outside the royal fold.
And this vulnerability, this is precisely why the palace is so terrified of this tell-all interview. Why does a broke, exiled duchess pose a greater threat than an actual senior prince did?
Because she is now completely outside the monarchy's control. Andrew, however disgraced he is, was still, he was still a royal subject living on royal property. He was constrained.
He had something to lose.
Exactly. Fergie, as a private citizen living outside the palace walls, has no skin in the game for loyalty anymore. She knows the secrets, especially about Andrew and the whole history of the Epstein connection, and Charles cannot stop her from speaking.
So if she's financially ruined, paranoid, and totally unconstrained, the major fear inside the palace is that she'll just go rogue.
Either deliberately in a moment of anger or just inadvertently by misspeaking. And she could cause profound, unnecessary embarrassment for King Charles and Queen Camilla.
That is the ultimate high-risk scenario. And you can't talk about this without bringing up the disaster that completely consumed Prince Andrew, the 2019 Newsnight interview.
The mateless scenario.
The mateless scenario. It was fatal for him. He failed because he lacked sincerity and empathy, and he offered up these bizarre, unbelievable defenses.
Not being able to sweat.
Well,
or the Pizza Express alibi.
Yeah. This raises an important question. Can Fergie avoid making that same catastrophic mistake?
Well, her team is working intensely to make sure she doesn't. And she does have one tactical advantage. Andrew didn't. She can focus on defending her lack of knowledge of Epstein's crimes rather than defending an actual friendship with him.
So her story, if she can pull it off, is, I was financially desperate, I made a huge mistake, but I was never complicit in his horrific actions.
Exactly. But that requires meticulous sincerity and perfect consistency about the money.
And that's the trap, isn't it?
It is a critical trap. She has to convincingly explain the huge gap between the £15,000 she admitted to and these devastating new leaks about 15 years of bankrolling and asking for $100,000.
If she stumbles on that one financial detail, if she seems evasive or insincere about where the money came from, her reputation is destroyed permanently.
And that 22-book deal will goes with it.
What's fascinating here is that Sarah Ferguson is standing right on the edge of a cliff. She's facing this existential choice. Salvation or total ruin, and it's all going to be decided by a single televised conversation.
She needs that six-figure payday for her immediate financial survival, but one perceived lie, one moment of arrogance, and her entire commercial life is over.
So what does this all mean? She's operating outside the palace's control, sure, but the crown, it seems, still holds one powerful, subtle form of leverage over her.
And that leverage is her family.
Her daughters. The most profound tension here is the fierce loyalty of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. They've remained so supportive of their vulnerable mother.
They have, and King Charles is reportedly taking these very calculated protective steps to support his nieces amid all the scandal. He's making sure they maintain their stable, quiet position within the wider family.
So as Sarah makes this high-stakes commercial gamble, the king's ongoing support for her children might just be the last non-legal constraint on what she's willing to reveal.
That's the new boundary she has to navigate in this tell-all. It's not just about her anymore.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the forces shaping this dramatic royal reckoning. We hope you feel better informed and ready to follow this incredible story as it continues to unfold.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.